Ladies and gentlemen, before we begin today's video, I would like to start this out by saying the events that I'm about to talk about are tragic. And with that being said, in no way, shape, or form am I glorifying the person that did these horrific acts, nor am I glorifying the acts that occurred to the victim laid to rest at this cemetery. I am simply here to document the story for you guys. So that being said, today we are here at this cemetery to visit the final resting place of Stephen Hicks, the first victim of Jeffrey Dahmer. All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Greensburg Cemetery here in Greene, Ohio. Now, as I said before, I'm here to visit the final resting place of Stephen Hicks. He is laid to rest here with his family, his mother and father, and I'm going to tell the story of what happened to this young man. So I can't tell the story without mentioning the person that did these acts to Stephen Hicks. You've all heard of him, Jeffrey Dahmer. I don't like saying that name, but this is the story. So, depending on which version you hear, there's a bunch of different versions, but there's two that I've mainly heard. One of them is Stephen Hicks, just 18-year-old kid, having fun in life. He was either going to a concert or coming from a concert. He was hitchhiking. He was on his way, wherever he was going. And unfortunately, as fate would have it that day, he was picked up by Jeffrey Dahmer. So Dahmer told him that he would pretty much take him wherever he needed to go. He just ended up taking him back to Dahmer's house. They ended up drinking. Dahmer got a little too friendly, and Stephen Hicks didn't like it. So Stephen Hicks, he wanted to leave, and Dahmer didn't like that. So Dahmer got some of his weights, like barbells and stuff, and he hit Stephen over the head, instantly unaliving him. And at the time, Dahmer had the house to himself. His dad and mom were split, and his mom took his brother, so Dahmer had the house to himself. That's when it happened. And so Dahmer had been experimenting with like animals on the side of the road, putting the remains in acid, letting the acid eat the flesh and stuff. Well, pretty much what happened with Stephen Hicks. Dahmer did some not so great things to Stephen Hicks. He pretty much melted his skin, body parts with acid, and crushed his bones with a sledgehammer. Trust me, I don't like saying these things, but this is the story. So he ended up putting his remains in the backyard, hidden, obviously. And then some time went on. And what's crazy about this is Dahmer's house is actually not too far from here. So not only that, but there's a time frame in there where he went to OSU over in Columbus. He couldn't keep his grades up. He got pretty much kicked out of every class, and his dad told him to go into the military. Well, that didn't work either. So Dahmer just pretty much went back home. And then the rest of the story moves to Milwaukee and, you know, all that stuff. But Stephen Hicks, he was just going on his merry way. He had a whole life ahead of him. Unfortunately, it was cut short. Like I said, he was either going to a concert or coming from a concert. But, you know, and almost 15 years later is when the family finally got closure. Dahmer was being investigated, and he finally admitted to unaliving Stephen Hicks. The police went to his house, which is here in Bath, Ohio, and they were going through everything, and they found Stephen Hicks's remains buried in the backyard. And they were confirmed that they were his remains. So the family, like I said, finally got closure. It took forever, almost 15 years. But it shouldn't have happened. You know, terrible, terrible things. But that's why I'm here today at the cemetery to pay my respects to Stephen Hicks. So I'm going to show you where he is laid to rest at here in this cemetery. Cemetery isn't all that big. This road kind of goes around to the right and loops back around. And I've kind of walked up a ways from where Stephen Hicks is laid to rest at. But straight ahead, that's the entrance. Right up there, you can see my car sitting at the bottom of the hill. But Stephen Hicks and his family are laid to rest right over here, about halfway up the hill. And I don't know how old this cemetery is, but there are some old headstones. So right here to my left, second one over, is where Stephen Hicks and his family are laid to rest. Right here. Stephen Hicks, 1959 to 1978, along with his parents, Martha and Richard. And there's even a little inscription at the bottom that says, "Finally laid to rest, October 7th, 1991. There's some flowers here, along with this little display. It says, "There are some who bring a light so great to the world that even after they have gone, the light remains." So I usually try to leave something for the person whose grave I'm visiting. And I have a penny here. A penny means that you simply visited. So I'm going to put my penny right over here on the corner, close to the standing part of it. So Stephen Hicks, rest in peace, you and your family. Now, like I said, this story varies from person to person, or whatever you find online. There's different versions of it. There's different things that happened. So if you heard something different than what I have said here today, that's okay. There's deer up there. But no, seriously, like, it's a tragic story. And like I said, it varies from person to person. So I don't need all the keyboard warriors going and saying, "Oh, well, he did this, he did that." I understand that. But I'm here to pay my respects to Stephen Hicks. And we have done that. And I feel myself a little better visiting Stephen Hicks. So, like I said, it's just one of those things that shouldn't have happened. I know I keep saying it, but it is what it is. But seriously, like, rest in peace, Stephen Hicks and his family, here at the Greensburg cemetery. There's a person with a leaf blower right over there, of course. But it's just crazy to be here, you know. Like, I visited like celebrity graves and stuff like that, but it's a little bit different. Kind of hits home a little differently. But I just hope that I have made this video as respectful as possible to Stephen Hicks and his family. You may be gone, but you are not forgotten, Stephen. And we're here to tell your story. We love you, we miss you. We're here to get your story out. And unfortunately, some of the people involved did some bad things. And I think I'm gonna end things here, guys. I appreciate you watching, and leave a comment if you've heard this story or what version of the story that you heard. But regardless, I appreciate you guys watching. And as always, peace out, take care, and we'll see you on the next one, ladies and gentlemen.